So whatever we say now will go to everybody. So we'll record it all, and then to those that couldn't make it, I'll just send them the recording. I upload it to YouTube, and then I can send them that so that they've got a copy.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it makes sense. Ah, there he is, the man himself.
Hello, Sharon.
Hello, Ivor. You've got your skinny jean brigade on this side now.
Hello.
Hello, who's that? Natasha?
Yes, that's
Hello,
Madam Skinny
Natasha.
Jeans. How you
Very
doing?
good. Yeah, no, great. Sharon, so we're on then for 3:30.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, we are.
How many people have confirmed?
20 have confirmed, 8 have apologized, and 2 are tentative. So we'll see what happens
That's
there.
fantastic.
Now, Ivor, just quickly, while it's only us on
All
the
right, well, fantastic.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention to you, we want to do the recruiters next week.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Ivor?
Yes.
We want to do the recruiters next week, but I'm going to have to relook our database.
I can hear you.
Okay. I need to just relook our database for the recruiters because we've got like 937 people.
You've got 937 people, but how many have confirmed?
Well, no, I haven't sent it out yet because you haven't given me a date. That's for next week, remember?
Okay.
So I'm just going to do some clean.
All right, that's fine. You can't scare me.
No, I scare myself.
Sharon, how about we do it on Thursday morning at about 10 o'clock?
Yeah, Thursday the 5th. Okay. 05.
Thursday the 8th.
Oh, shit, it's the 8th. Yeah. Okay. I'm in April already. Thursday the 8th at 10. Will do.
At 10 o'clock.
Got it all. We'll organize.
All right. I'm happy to break it up. If you have tremendous response, then I'm quite happy to break it up and we can do it either provincially or in some other way.
Okay, I'll have a look at the segmentation and then see what we can do there.
Fantastic. Very, very good.
Welcome, Dennis. Thanks for joining us.
Sharon?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm going to reconnect at 3:30 if that's all right.
Okay, I'll be here for everybody else and I'll chat to you at 3:30.
Shay,
Yes, Kat?
do you think that with the destination change in terms of awards, that you're going to have a bigger turnout in Cape Town for the conference?
I don't know if it's bigger, but we did survey everybody at the conference in August, all the Joburg people, and they were pretty keen because they wouldn't mind coming down to Cape Town. But also remember in the past, with our collaboration with Bepesa, they have easily, according to Gareth and their team, they can easily do 500 people as well.
Okay, all right. So there's a chance that you'll have a lot of your Gautengers attending Cape Town instead.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
It is our agreement in our collaboration that we will take turns, and we'll see how this year goes. And then we are also talking of possible just regional functions to announce the finalists.
Okay.
Because then that might satisfy everybody, and then we will know by then, are we settling into Joburg or are we going to alternate?
Sure. Okay. No, it makes sense. See, somebody else has joined us.
Hi, am I talking to Natasha?
Yes, who's that?
Natasha, is Dennis here. Sorry, I just signed on. I could hear that you and Sharon, I think, were probably having a chat.
Yes,
but just
hi,
to let you
Dennis.
know, I think this is only supposed to start at 12:30. So what I can do is I'll disconnect myself until 12:30, or do you want me to hang on?
It's up to you. I think we've got another 5 or 6 minutes to go, so it's absolutely fine. But I wasn't actually referring to you. I was referring to somebody else who's just joined. MCS Becca Papery.
Dennis, you can just mute your mic in the meantime and carry on doing what you do.
Okay, fine. Thanks very much.
Hello everyone, it's Leanne.
Hello, Leanne. I was just about to ask who that was. Welcome.
Thank you, Sharon. It's good to be part of the group. I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be fun. I promise you we've got such exciting things in store. This is only the beginning, so watch the space.
That sounds really exciting. I'm glad to be part of it. Hey?
Thank you, my love.
I'm just going to mute myself. I'm going to go out and get one of my colleagues for me.
Perfect. The more the merrier. I'm going to do the same here.
Sure. Thanks.
Hello, Gavin.
How you doing, Sharon?
Tash.
Hi, Gav. That was Tash, not Sharon.
Sorry, I thought it was you for a second there. I was just plugging in, and as I plugged in, I got a hello.
Hello.
Hello, Janine. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Good.
We'll start in a few minutes. We are expecting about 20 people to participate.
Okay, fantastic. How's it, Tash?
Hello.
I'm going to stay on for as long as I can. If I go off, Tash, will you just take notes for me?
The whole session is being recorded, and Sharon will make it available to everybody. So
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sharon, hi, it's Ivor here.
Hello, Ivor. Welcome back. Yeah, the crowd is growing, and we all look forward to the session.
Okay, so my understanding is you've now got 9 participants out of a total of 20 who have confirmed. Do you want to start, or do you want to give it 5 more minutes?
Ivor, I think I'll start with the introductions, which will take a little bit of the time. And then as they jump on, I am recording it, so I will have it available for everybody at a later stage. So welcome everybody to, as I was saying earlier, a very exciting time and really some exciting initiatives. I'm very excited to have Ivor part of everything that we're doing. Some mornings it feels as if he's my boss, phones me at 7:30 in the morning and tells me what I'm doing that day, which is always very welcome. So welcome Ivor and welcome everybody. I think the sooner, because we've only got an hour, and having a look at the agenda that we were putting together, Ivor, it may be too big. So let's go.
Right, so I've narrowed it down to essentially three topics. I'm going to want to do a review of the Employer Association strategy. I'm just then going to want to talk about the group's shared services, which include the Skills Trust, the Enterprise Supply Development Incubator, and supplier registration and grading. And then I'm going to be talking about the grading system itself. So those are the 3 that I've narrowed our original discussion down to. Is that okay with you, Sharon?
100%. Thank you, Ivor.
Fantastic. So should we give it a go? Should we start?
Let's go, let's go.
All right, so the ball's in your court. Why are we here?
Is it in my court? Why are we here? We are here today. The people on this call are the people that have been nominated to be stakeholders in one of the 9 chambers, or have been appointed as vice chairman or chairman of each of the chambers. So the structure is there are 9 chambers, and we have got 2 stakeholders for each of the regions in each of those 9 chambers. We haven't filled all the roles as yet, but I will, in your grouping, because you're all regionalized, I will send you a list of what we're missing, and you can make suggestions as to nominations or people we can nominate going forward. But we needed to get going, and we needed to get into the industry. I know many people are incredibly busy, so we will be knocking on their doors, and we will be sending NAG emails to remind them to be part of it. Ivor, over to you. Let's do this.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody. So we are talking here specifically about the fact that the CCMG, as an employer association in this instance, has identified that the sector of contact centers is a sector which is constituted by 9 separate industries, which collectively are working together as the sector of the contact center industry, and that the CCMG, in this regard, is an employer association, essentially meaning not that it represents the labor relations priorities of the members of the CCMG, but instead that it represents the trade and the environment within which you trade, either as individual industries or collectively as a sector of contact center companies in some form or another within that sector of contact centers, that this is an association representing you collectively as employers. As a case in point, some of you might have participated last week in our online discussions around the proposed legislative change to CETAs, which is encapsulated in the National Skills Development Strategy 4 document, input for which was ostensibly over at the end of January, but quite frankly, which has been extended. Certainly we're assuming it's been extended until such time as we've literally got our input in as the collective sector for the contact center industries involved. So what we're saying is this, that there is a need for a common voice. There is a need for a common approach to representing the collective interests of employers, and ultimately at the end of the day for acting as an employer association in every sense possible, not just the labor relations issues, which quite frankly are not the concern of this particular employer association. So what would have happened ordinarily, what needs to happen now in terms of even NSDS 4, which was proposed, which is going to have a dramatic impact, particularly on the private training provision component of the contact center industry, both internal private training organizations as well as external private training organizations selling a service through to the contact center sector. What is going to happen now is that the CCMG is going to spearhead the development of a 5-year plan, a 5-year strategic plan in terms of what the National Skills Development Strategy 4 document says needs to happen. And then, quite frankly, a 3-year budget for that plan in terms of deliverables, which needs to be given through to a respective CETA, which would be in charge of the contact center grouping of industries, and then by that CETA through to the the Department of Higher Education and Training and the National Skills Authority ultimately. So what we're saying is that it's time for us to step up as a sector consisting of these 9 industries, for us to self-govern in terms of determining our own strategic plan for talent management, I suppose, at the end of the day, which touches upon the professional body, touches upon training providers, touches upon our professional designation activities, touches upon everything that the CCMG is currently doing with you and for you as the sector as a whole. And then a 3-year budget, which in terms of NSDS 4 will essentially be a wish list, which we're going to have to forcefully push through every single year and every single funding window that becomes available to the sector, because ultimately, as we've known, as we've discussed in our online discussions last week, NSDS 4 is nothing but not friendly to the private sector, the levy-paying sector, I might add, and the private training providing market as well. So our task is cut out for us. Our path is cut out for us, and we have to take up that responsibility collectively as the CCMG. So that's why we're saying that the CCMG needs to be recognized as an employer association. But what we're also saying is that the CCMG needs to provide collective services to its members for a number of different reasons in those 9 industries. And we've identified 3 initial critical collective services, which quite frankly are low-hanging fruit, which are supposedly no-brainer collective services to be offered by the CCMG, which include the establishment of a skills trust for member companies that want to participate. Now, this is directly in relation to Triple BEE, and essentially what it means is that in terms of Triple BEE, the skills development element of Triple BEE requires that you as an employer spend 5% of payroll over and above your skills levy, spend an additional 5% on skills development activities. And we're finding on average that it's taking an average company roughly between 18 months and 24 months to spend that 1 year's worth of that 5%. So what we're doing in establishing a skills trust is hopefully extending the opportunity for member companies, contributing companies, to be able to have access to that 1 year's worth of their skills levy over a 24-month period as opposed to an 18-month period, where that skills trust, which essentially needs to be governed by you as individuals, will be in a position to direct how it's spent, how the funding is spent on bursaries, learnerships, skills programs, and other special projects, many of which will be related to QCTO, or Qualification Council for Trade and Occupation activities, which otherwise are supposedly supposed to be funded out of your 1% skills levy in terms of NSDS4, but will certainly need a lot of additional funding in the process. So that's the Skills Trust. And the important thing about the Skills Trust, and Sharon, I keep emphasizing it, is that that Skills Trust will have 2 funding windows a year and be paying out, hopefully be paying out monies collected in 3 sets of priorities. Number 1, the companies making the contribution within that 24-month period. Number 2, the associations such as the CCM, such as the call center MG, I'm losing my train of thought, such as the CCMG, which in fact will be doing and activating group training activities for its member companies. And the third priority will be to the training provider network of private training providers, and I emphasize private training providers, to incentivize 2 things: that our members, the companies participating within the CCMG Employer Association, that our members are encouraged to continue doing business with private training providers, and secondly, that the public training providers who are favored in terms of their access to the skills levy by NSDS4, that those public training providers enter into public-private partnerships with our endorsed private training providers within the professional body environment. So that's absolutely critical. Before I move to the next group shared service, are there any comments about what I've said so far? Comments, observations, or questions?
Ivor, it's Tash here.
Hello, Tash.
I have a question around the trust and how, because obviously as part of a bigger group, it's something that we are looking into. So how does that get structured from a trust perspective? Is it all kind of the members that are involved in this association? And I don't know the legalities around it, and how does that affect your Triple BEE, and maybe just a little bit more information on it.
Thank you for that. So essentially the trust is a sacrosanct body when it comes to fiduciary responsibility. You want to make sure that on the board of that trust you have chartered accountants and you have lawyers, and you have a very strong Chinese wall. Don't know why they call it Chinese wall, by the way, but a very strong Chinese wall between the members, the training providers, and the associations on the one side, in other words, the beneficiaries of the trust, and on the other side, in terms of the decision-making process. I think it's absolutely critical that it has a fiduciary set of accountability standards which go beyond any public institution, so that it is an opportunity for the CCMG to say to the rest of the world, we can self-govern in an accountable way in terms of corporate governance standards to that everyone would expect. There is someone, by the way, who has an open microphone. If I can just ask you to mute your microphone, I'm getting a lot of what else has. Good. So, Natasha, so essentially, it's for the trust itself to determine the beneficiary categories. And as I've said, it would generally be bursaries, learnerships, skills programs, but also other special interest projects for the industry. For example, the development of induction instruments, the development of assessment instruments, the development of a framework, which would be an online portal framework. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a self-governing mechanism which collectively benefits from the input of more than one company, and in the process, over a 24-month period and beyond, can make economies of scale benefits available in 2 periods a year to all of the members participating in this. It needs to be a voluntary scheme, not a scheme, not a compulsory scheme. And so ultimately, as we build the trust, we will build it with those thoughts in mind. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if we have the opportunity to extend a company, and not every company, because there are some companies that have internal mechanisms designed to use those skills levies within a 12-month period. But the vast majority of companies don't necessarily have dedicated machines. And so as a shared service, it is there for those kinds of companies. And so the Skills Trust, its job is to spend money on SAQA and QCTO related appropriate services to those 3 needy groups, the companies, the associations, and the training providers, in such a way that there is a receipt for investment which is acceptable to rating agencies, to verification agencies that are rating agencies under SANAS, the South African National Accreditation Association. From there, then, the company would then get an invoice for their rating agent, for their verification agent, showing that they've invested in a scheme which is a sectoral-wide scheme across 9 industries, benefiting the target market, which has to benefit in terms of triple BEE. Tasha, have I answered your question to some extent in that regard?
Yes, thank you. The only other thing I needed to find out is, I'm pretty sure it's something that will be communicated in depth, but sort of a guideline as to what the criteria would be for granting that funding. And I'm assuming that it would be private training providers that are members that would be appointed.
Thank you so much for that. So the professional body itself has, in terms of the regulations of professional bodies, it has to establish an endorsement mechanism for training providers. Now, what that means is that the professional body for the contact center sector will have to endorse training providers who offer qualifications which are able to be mapped to the professional designations that you've registered with SAQA. And you endorse a training provider in 2 respects. In other words, does he or she have a facility? And number 2, do their learning programs map to your designations? An endorsement process is essentially a sectoral or an industry or a private sector check and balance on the SAQA and the QCTO accreditation that takes place. It's a verification of that accreditation. And what we're saying is that only those training providers who are endorsed in this way by the professional body will in fact be able to have an eligible pathway to apply for funding from a skills trust of that nature, because then they're accountable for in this respect, they're accountable to the industry and not to SAQA or to the QCTO. And there are many gaps in the SAQA and the QCTO accreditation and accountability process. I don't need to tell you that. And it's critically important that you as the sector, who are in fact paying those skills levies in the first place, that you as the sector have the alpha and the omega definitive say on which training providers should in fact be benefiting from a scheme creating funds available for training providers servicing the sector, and particularly private versus public training providers. I think we will ultimately end up with a set of regulations which include the following. Include the consideration that public training providers are not excluded from having access to the funds available from the Skills Trust, but will have to go through the same endorsement process that any private training provider will have to go through. And I think, as we discussed last week, one of those endorsement criteria will require that public training provider has to evidence that they've entered into a public-private partnership with private training providers who are endorsed by our professional body, that they're not excluding the professional body from delivering their services to our members, who essentially are the private contact center sector, paying both of those skills levies. That's the 1% skill levy, and it's the 5% skills levy in the first place. Does that answer your question, your concern, Tasha?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions or considerations before we move forward? Okay, so I'm then going to move forward. Sharon, are you comfortable with where we are at the moment?
Ivor, yes. I think you're setting the scene. I think we're going to have many questions. Thanks, Tash, for your questions. But I think a lot is going on in everybody's minds right now. But I think as you build it with the other two areas, they're going to understand how it all hangs together.
I think for me what's critically important, and this is my mantra over the last 30 years of being in a relationship with you guys, is this. And I've said it so many times, but I am going to say it again. Our rules and our regulation, and if you want, our trading framework for everything we're touching, will be determined by the quality of the representatives you choose to establish those rules, to scrutinize the proposals, to contribute to those proposals becoming more and more of service to you, the member companies. So if you are ultimately electing stakeholders who are predominantly going to be training providers rather than owners of the businesses or critical stakeholders in your businesses, then the rules are going to favor the training providers. Alternatively, if the vast majority of the stakeholders you want to nominate into the positions where they can be instrumental in affecting the regulatory framework are going to be people like Sharon, then in fact, the rules are going to favor the associations. And I would say your first priority as member companies should always be not to nominate training providers or in fact representatives of the associations, as much as you're nominating from amongst yourselves the people who own the industry and the people who are stakeholders in the industry, to make sure not only that you understand access and the ease of access, but that you craft the access amongst yourselves and the ease of that access, so that the CCMG is simply a facilitator of the process and the endorsed training providers are beneficiaries of the process, but that process is defined by you. They're your rules. And I know it's a mantra, and those people who know me know that I talk about it every opportunity, but you get the leadership you deserve. And this is really one of the last occasions you're going to get to be able to formulate the rules and the regulatory framework around access, around economy of scale benefits, etc., etc. And that's why we're doing this. And I'm so excited to be doing this project with the CCMG. All right, Sharon, should I move on?
Yes, please, Ivor.
Apologies. That was me. That's me bad. I'm going to repeat what I said. So we've spoken about the Skills Trust. I want to now talk about the enterprise and the supplier development incubator as an additional service from the Employer Association, a shared service, because it's become very evident that there are some companies that have very strong enterprise and supplier development incubators internally, but that there are very many other companies that are not touching upon meaningful enterprise and supplier development. And in fact, what those companies are choosing to do when their verification agents say you need to spend 4% of net profit after tax on enterprise and supplier development and social economic investment, what they're tending to do is simply give that money out all over the place and simply spend the money rather than strategically investing it for the industry and for the sector of 9 industries as a whole. So the second priority of shared services after we've established the Skills Trust will be to look at the enterprise and the supplier development incubator opportunities within the entire contact center sector of these 9 industries and see where it's possible to establish new businesses, enterprises, and then grow those new businesses into suppliers. So we're doing both enterprise and supplier development with you as our member companies in such a way that it doesn't rip the heart out from your current businesses, from your current opportunity to qualify for tenders and opportunities both locally and internationally, but in such a way where we bring you and the new enterprises and the new suppliers together, and together we own those relationships so that we truly are self-governing. Because that's why enterprise and supplier development have been created within the BBBE legislative framework, is for exactly that to happen. Not for you to be throwing money out there, enterprise development money out there for people to wear a t-shirt to say, I'm an enterprise development recipient and I'm running an ice cream selling business on Umhlanga Beach and I've registered my own business. That's not the purpose of that side of the legislative framework in terms of how it should be impacting on the contact center sector. And equally from a supplier development point of view, it doesn't necessarily mean stationery supplier and toiletry suppliers and even cleaning suppliers into the contact center sector. BBBE says meaningful supplier development of where you spend 80% of your procurement budget. And that needs a sectoral focus across the 9 industries, and it needs industry balancing and sectoral balancing every single year. And so the second group service we'll be looking at is enterprise and supplier development incubation, to make sure that it's a place you're comfortable investing your funding in because you're getting bang for your buck in terms of enterprise development recognition, supplier development recognition, and also, and I need to say this, and excuse me if it ruffles a few feathers, but also where you are collectively protecting your existing turf, which you're entitled to do, so that in the process, you continue to qualify for tenders and for quoting opportunities and proposal opportunities, and you're not marginalized out of the contact center sector by everybody, but including by government in the process. It's a very contentious project. It's certainly only the second priority project after we've established the Skills Trust, but it is a meaningful project. Is there any comment or feedback in that regard before we go further? All right. I'm going to carry on, and please, if you've got a question, you can type your question in. I'll be only too happy to read it and to answer it aloud. The third group service element we're going to be looking at from the employer association side is this. It is supplier registration and grading services. And again, this is not something we're going to be doing, but we're going to be managing as the employer association to make sure that the shared service is available for member companies to utilize. And the great thing about this is it's placing an emphasis on your supplier base, not on yourselves, either in terms of funding or in processing or in terms of that final certification, which is a grading certification of your suppliers, to make sure that you're not only getting a rand for rand on your own procurement budgets, but you're getting as close to a rand 35 on every rand you're spending. In other words, level 1 and level 2 suppliers for 80% of the funding that you're suspending in your business. Because our objective in looking to offer you shared services through this association network is for you to be able to maximize the points you can earn, those 15 points you can earn on procurement within your BBBE strategy, to make sure you get the maximum rating that you can be deserving of rather than what you have to settle for. Now, there are a number of shared services around supplier registration and grading. I think the important thing is to say that where a rating agent offers supplier grading and supplier registration, from April this year, it won't be possible for them to continue to offer you those services, because from April this year, they are the judge and they are the jury, but they cannot be the consultant or the service provider in the process. So it is a gap waiting to be taken up by an association. And as an employer association, the CCMG is saying it's absolutely critical that our members across the board have access. They don't have to use these services, but so that they know that if they want to, they can say to their suppliers, go to this place and come away with a certificate of rating and present us with a certificate of rating. So we're not only looking at your verification level, but we're importantly looking at the fact that you have been graded across all of the mechanisms you have to be graded against, which ordinarily a company internally would have to be running such a machine for their own internal suppliers. And importantly, it takes away the funding requirement from you, the company, and it places it directly in the ambit of the service provider to you to have to, in fact, fund themselves through that mechanism. So those are the three services which in the short to medium term we're prioritizing to be offered by this association, this employer association. The Skills Trust Service, the Enterprise and Supply Development Incubation, and the Supplier Registration and Grading Services. Before I carry on to talk about member grading services, are there any questions or observations?
Are you all awake out there?
Yes, we are.
Yep.
Yes, we are.
We
All
are.
right. Okay. Thank you all so much. Okay, so Sharon, if it's okay with you, I'm now going to continue to the third and the final point before we take open discussion, and that is this. That as an employer association, the professional body, which is in a partnership with the employer association, has to say to the employer association, we would like you to run a member grading system. A member grading system that would grade members on at least 4 categories of excellence or 4 categories of performance. The first, and I call those categories stars. So the first star would be legislative and regulatory compliance, particularly in relation to triple BEE. And that really is an external verification of your existing verification and grading in relation to how it affects the contact center sector. The second star, or the second category of grading, would be professionalization. And this is squarely about buy-in to the professional designations offered by the professional body and achieving percentages of achievement within a particular period. And let me just pause here and say this. It is the intention of the employer association to be saying to its member companies, do you agree that by 2022, for argument's sake, and that date, by the way, is arbitrary, but do you agree that by 2022, as the members of the employer association, you will all agree to obtain a 4-star grading or at least a 3-star grading against any of the 4 stars? And the second star grading, which would be professionalization, would imply percentage targets at each of the critical levels of professional recognition. So, for example, at the technician level, the operator level, the professional practitioner level, and the master level of professional practice within the contact center sector. And so we would collectively establish targets which are acceptable to the membership by 2022, 2023, and we would collectively work towards grading companies initially in terms of where they sit against those targets, and then eventually a final grading by that date of 2022. So we're able to say to the world at large that members of this employer association by 2022 will all have achieved the following percentages of penetration of professional recognition, of continuous professional development compliance, at the 4 levels of professional recognition within the sector. So that's the second star, which is professionalization. The third star is interesting because it is the intention of the employer association to enter into an MOU then with BPESA, where BPESA is tasked with certifying the global readiness as a standard of the grade, the global readiness of our member companies to trade internationally. And that's obviously the BPESA responsibility. It's the BPESA work that they have a mandate for from DTI and from you, the members of the CCMG out there. And so it's about holding BPESA accountable for the grading of member companies in South Africa for global readiness. Local suppliers for local needs will not necessarily go for a 3-star rating on global readiness. but there are many companies that would appreciate that star recognition, because that recognition then gives them the recognition as a center of excellence, which is globally ready and therefore able to participate in global campaigns for inward bound investment into South Africa. And so the fourth star then is also in association, but this time not with BPESA, but with another association, and that is recognition of customer centricity. And that, if you want, is a very strong sense of excellence about the level of customer centricity coming out of your business to your customers, be they your corporate customers or ultimately their customers, be they the consumers at the end of the day. And again, that would be done on an outsourced basis, but those four criteria collectively would then become the employer association grading mechanism for the recognition of excellence amongst member companies. Any questions, concerns, or observations in that regard specifically?
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me. It's Dennis Dallas here.
Dennis, yes, we can hear you. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. So just a quick question around the professionalism side of it. I take it we're talking about agents in a call center in terms of how they handle those calls. You mentioned about the grading side. Are we talking about the actual quality of people in the actual call center here?
So thank you for that question. So what we are saying is this: professionalization, the indicator of professionalization, is ultimately the achievement of professional designation from the professional body. It is the task of the professional body to make sure that there is professional recognition across all 9 industries within the sector of the contact center sector. So within the contact center sector, there are those 9 chambers within the employer association, which would each need to be serviced by the professional designation on offer by the professional body. And so it is those designations to the percentage of the division in the company obtained, which would indicate professionalization, and if you want, make that company a center of excellence within the contact center sector as a whole.
Thanks very much. Thanks for clarifying that.
I do apologize. I know it is confusing at this stage. I think the more we work with it, hopefully the clearer it will become. Because I think, Dennis, your question is very appropriate in the following way. If we cannot make this clear to our members, number one, and to their clients, number two, then we're creating a Rolls-Royce effectively for a go-kart track. And that's the very last thing we want to or need to be doing here.
Thanks, Harvey.
Any other questions or observations? Sharon, from your side?
I think just the other thing, Dennis, is you alerted to the fact for customer service. And I think what we're going to focus on there is there are 2 sets of standards that are out and available. The one is the South African Bureau of Standards, and they have published standard for customer service. And we also have, for the companies that are ISO accredited, there are new ISO standards. And I think when we're looking at the customer service part of it, we're looking at possibly one of those or both of those.
No, thanks, Sharon. I can see exactly where you're coming from here. I just know from a collections industry point of view, you know, we have ADRA, we have the Council for Debt Collectors, and in fact, and we also abide by their rules and regulations at the same time. But I'm talking, look, the customer element applies on the debt recovery side as well, and we would probably be looking at everything that's available to us.
Ivor, you're on mute again.
Sorry about that. Dennis, I was saying that I wanted to say this, that the beauty about what you've just observed is this, that it is an opportunity for the CCMG then to enter into a collaborative relationship with all of those organizations you're talking about, so that collectively we are combining in terms of customer centricity specifically, that level of recognition based on their activities. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. What we're talking about, if you want, is packaging these issues. Legislative, regulatory compliance, professionalization, global readiness, and customer centricity, quite frankly, from wherever we can get it, from whichever organizations are doing the job that can be mapped into our model so that we can talk about a collective responsibility for determining centers of excellence.
I agree. I think that's exactly where we're going to have to take it from. Thanks, Ivor.
So, Sharon, that is really, those are the three categories of points I wanted to make in this discussion. Number one, what an employer association should be and how we want to operate as an employer association, and quite frankly, what we don't want to have to be. And number two, group shared services offered by such an association, and specifically those of grading of our members so that we have a foundation for the recognition of excellence within our sector of 9 industries.
Ivor, thank you. I think it's as clear as anything, and it is really necessary if we're going to cement this sector and avoid people like the government, like anybody else, telling us how to do things. So I think one of the things which is important now is the group of people that we're talking to at the moment are a smaller group of what should be in the region of 60 people that will drive this. And I think if you outline when we're going to have, when are the meetings, because these people now need to take this into consideration, understanding where we're going and understanding that they form a huge part of driving this and making sure it is all suited to the industry.
Sorry. So, Sharon, you're completely correct. And I think that it needs to be done provincially as much as it's done nationally. So I think critically important, we need established the industry leadership structure, which is representative of the provinces, so that we're able then across those 9 industries to have a provincial cut in as many provinces as are affected by the contact center sector, and then to work with those provinces on a provincial process of determining the best way to go around these 3 areas, and then integrate that into a national process, but quite frankly to do it quickly so that our members see that we're seizing that initiative.
Absolutely, Ivor, and we have already started it. So there are a couple of gaps. We have got, as I explained earlier, we've got chair people and vice chair people in each of the chambers, or you're calling them sectors. We've also then got 2 stakeholders per region. My next step is I want the collective, the group that is on the line now, to just send me an email to say I'm in or I'm out. Then I will communicate with you, number one, your region, who we have in the region, and where we are missing people, to see who you want to nominate into those spaces.
Fantastic. All right, Sharon, so that's absolutely fantastic. I assume then that what you'll be doing is sending out a link to this recording then on YouTube, and also just a 1-page call to action of both the companies that participated as well as those that wanted to but didn't participate.
Yes, Ivor, I will communicate that with everybody. Then again, we are going to touch base again when we do the launch of the awards, which are, just to give you the dates in case you haven't seen them, the 26th is going to be Johannesburg, 26th of March is Johannesburg, 27th of March is KZN, and 28th of March will be Cape Town. And what we're hoping to do there is, after the launch, because we've got all the people participating, is we want to do a breakaway meeting with all of our stakeholders. They would have had all the communication, and as I've asked now, if you just drop me an email and say, yes, I'm in, I'm happy to be a part of this, I will continue communicating with you. You will get this call. It has been recorded, and I will share that with all of you. And then we start working.
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I hope I wasn't coming across as shouting. I just know that one has to be loud with this kind of technology. But thank you very much for listening to me. And Sharon, thanks for the opportunity to work with you guys.
Thank you, Ivan. As I said up front, this is going to be exciting.
Thank you, Ivan. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Sharon.
Okay, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.